All right. Hello, everybody. This is the Kubernetes SIG Architecture Community Meeting for um, October 7th, 2021. Um, uh, why don't we get started? I think we have a pretty short agenda, so let me share that.
You're muted, John.
Okay. Can people hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Has anybody heard anything I've said, or I've been talking to myself here on mute?
We haven't heard anything since you said, let me bring up the agenda.
Okay, got it. Yes, Zoom automatically stopped my audio when I brought up the agenda. Got it. Okay, thank you. That was confusing. All right, Sergey, why don't you take it from here? I think that's all I said.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to talk about SIG node test tags cleanup. So we've been looking at the SIG node test, and we've been trying to understand the history and how tags were applied, and how we can create a how we can tell people to apply it going forward, all the tags. And investigation of that led me into writing this document. And like digger, more you dig into that, more edge cases and interesting findings you find. So I don't know, do you want me to share the screen, or you just want to open the document? What would be the best way?
Why don't you go ahead? I'll stop sharing, and you can. I'll give you permission to share. Okay. You should be able to share it now.
Okay. So yeah, there is we started all this effort from understanding how features and not feature being applied to tests, and how they degraded over time in some test cases. So I started looking into that, and then I realized that some tests, like these tags, are applied improperly, and sometimes feature indicates that the test is running on special environment, and sometimes it means that it doesn't need special environment, but it wouldn't run on other environments. So feature is applied in a little bit inconsistently. Plus, there are some situations when feature gate is disabled on certain environments. There is no easy way to tell not to run tests related to this feature gate. So we applied all sorts of different hacks, starting with most commonly, we just add skip into the beginning of test when feature gate is not applied, and but skip is very very strange decision, because skip, like if you intend to test a feature but you have a skip, then you may not test it and still get a green result. So it was also like questionable solution we wanted to take a look at, and there are other problems. So I created this proposal out of like few items, and we discussed it with SIG node CI subgroup already. This is edits from subgroup. The first, feature semantic. Today we have feature flag defined in SIG testing community repository. And the feature tag today indicates that the feature may not work on all distros and or environments. So if something requires special setup for CI, then it will be marked as feature or supposed to be marked as feature.
Hey,
and
Sergey,
when it's, yep.
Sorry, can you pause for a second? Before we drill into the specific recommendations here, so go back up to the problems.
Yep.
Okay, so these are sort of, do we have, I guess what I'm wondering about is sort of what's motivating changing this. I believe that it's all a mess because that's what happens over time. Like you said, things degrade. Are we trying to accomplish some goal with create some certain test jobs that we're not able to create? Are we trying to, I see that there's one that says we want to disable all beta feature gates. I think we do that for conformance tests, but probably not for, which is only a small fraction of the tests. So that makes sense. Like, what are we going to, so there's two, I don't want it to be a theoretical exercise of like, we solve these problems that are there in theory, but we actually don't need to solve those problems because I want to make sure people are spending their time on something, you know, that's the most useful for the project. So can you explain to me a little bit more like what we're going to do with the thing once it's solved?
Okay, so first of all, we don't have a clear guidance how to apply tags when we develop features. So we see very inconsistent way people apply it, and it always causes a lot of comments in the PR. Like, I have alpha feature, how do I apply, like which tags I need to apply? And there is no like clear guidance, so we see all sorts of like not feature and feature combinations. This is first, like have a guidance, like this is what it is about. Like we didn't have it documented, now we have it documented. So first, have a guidance. Second, we see problems with multiple tests. Like for instance, runtime class test. It requires test handler to be registered as a runtime class on the environment. So it has a special meaning. But we don't mark it as feature because all our like open source CIs have this runtime class pre-installed, but on other environments, it may not be pre-installed. So now we introduce a very cryptic workaround when we check that specific cloud provider is specified when we run a test. So if it's GCE, then run a test, otherwise skip a test. And it's like just not very good solution for everybody. So we need to mark this test special somehow. Same with exec prop timeout, similar situation with exec prop timeout. We introduced exec prop timeout feature gate, and we said that if you have it set, then everything will be working, and it's true by default. So we don't mark it as anyway, like test depending on feature gate, anyway special. So everybody who disables this feature gate stumble across failed tests, and they don't know how to disable this failed test except like querying by specific tests, and they need to like go very deep into understanding that this test needs to be disabled because a feature gate is not true in their environment. So those are kind of examples when it's inconsistent, and it raises a lot of people spending much time to understand why it's not working and how to fix it.
Okay,
better
so if I can
will help.
Yeah, if I can just echo that back and see if I understand correctly. So first of all, during feature development, the current situation is confusing. People don't know what to tag their tests and why. So we want to clear that up so that we avoid a lot of noise in feature development and that we get it right. Two, we want to make sure that we've thought about how to apply these features and the goals of applying those tags. The one I'm hearing in particular is the feature gate one. When your a feature's in development, you want to tag a test associated with that feature to indicate that the featured gate must be enabled in order for that test to run. And then it sounds like there's another set of tests that have some dependencies in setup that may not be available in every cluster that we want to run the tests against. And so we want to tag that set of tests with something to indicate you need setup, although one vanilla tag, well, okay, I saw some discussion later in the document about that. And then I guess the last piece is, given that we are establishing those clearer rules, we want to go through and fix all the ones that don't match properly. Is that a valid summary of the goals and the actions to be taken?
Yes, pretty complete. I think one more thing that I wanted to highlight. So sometimes today we mark something as feature because of the reason that is requires special environment, but then we don't run this test as like in some conformance or like not conformance or release blocking test cases, even though we may want to run it there, because this is something that needs to work everywhere, and we want it to be stable and enabled, but then you mark this as feature, and that's why we filter it out, and it is a little bit confusing as well. So
Yeah,
I think it will increase code coverage.
There's a mismatch in the open source CI configurations that combines with this tagging in really hidden ways, and often means we're not running tests that someone who wrote a test thinks they're running. Like they write a test and it's part of a feature, and so they put a feature tag in there because they see that tag, and then the pre-submit passes and it's green and it merges and they're happy and they think they're doing a good job, and it's not even running at all.
Yes, that name is super misleading, and I didn't see a proposal to change that. Although I see a proposal to change the semantics, but so okay, I think that there's a point there that like whatever names we're using today, we should make sure that the names, because people, as much as we like to think people read the documentation about what to tag their tests, and they might, the names are really evocative, and if they'll remember things based on the names. So we should be careful about that too. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to get my head around the context.
Sorry, I concentrate on solutions so much that I forgot that problem statement needs to be a little bit more clearer. So my assumption was like, my original audience was a little bit more into all those problems, and we've been discussing it over and over again. So sorry for that. Anyway, so first I suggest we change semantic in the description for feature, saying that feature is something that not necessarily work on all distros, rather than on all distros environments. So let's say like today we say that it only marks something that requires special configuration for CI. It's very confusing. I will explain in and node capabilities. So today we mark test as feature. In the documentation, we stand that feature will be marked as something special setup and CI required. I think it's a little bit misleading. We want to make sure that feature indicates functionality that either working or not working, depending on like whether you're running specific distro or specific environment. So if you have swap enabled on a node, then it will be we can think of it as a feature, for instance, and then this feature needs to be working. So this is a change for feature.
Just sort of, I don't want to introduce another thing here, but I guess I would consider, if I were in your shoes, I would consider evaluating that word feature, because like Jordan said, the natural, sorry, Dims, I can't see the hands. You should just blur out. That's what I do.
Yeah, I will start doing that.
So let me just finish my thought. I would consider, if I were sitting in your shoes, I would think about that name is super misleading, and exactly what Jordan just said happens, where people think, oh, this tags it as associated with my feature, I'll just tag it, and they don't realize that means it's not going to run. unless somebody asks it to run. I would almost put that, to name that something like requires, right? Or something like that. Like this test requires some specific setup, requires swap to be enabled on the node. Now that's a bigger change, but maybe if we're in here mucking with everything, maybe we just make it a little bit more explicit for what it is. That's just a suggestion, but you guys can think about what's better. Maybe Dims, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll go first and then Daniel can go next. Is that okay, Daniel? Okay. So one of the problems here is like when something goes GA, we don't expect a feature to be present at that time, right? So take the thing of runtime class, right? Like if it's a feature, will it always exist even when the thing has gone GA, right? Because even something that has gone GA might not work on certain environments. So that's a problem there. Daniel?
Yeah. There are a few, like going to John's point about tests having requirements. There's a few different classes of requirement that kind of need to be expressed a little bit differently. So the feature flag case is usually fairly simple. While a feature is behind a flag, tagging it as needing this flag, helpful for everyone trying to run said test. Especially as we remove things that would let you enable that in your tests, like removing dynamic kubelet config. But there are also a bunch of tests that require something a little bit different that is hard to map back to something that simple. Take that, for example, of GPU tests that require a node that has GPUs configured and drivers set up. Or needing swap enabled, where like usually that doesn't require special hardware, but like it does require special system configuration. There's a few of these cases right now, aside from the feature case, but there aren't enough of them to have a like good consistent design that we know is gonna like make sense for people. And so the takeaway from the like CI subgroup meeting was we solve the most common case we have, which is something needs a feature flag. And then we look at this again in a few months to figure out if there are other special cases that we keep, and then try and map those back to a common paradigm. Which is why like the special feature tag, for example, is gonna go away. And so it's mostly a case of dealing with the common case for now, accepting there are still gonna be some oddities, and then solving those later. Jordan?
Yeah. I think I agree with what you were saying. There's some chat as well talking about like feature enablement versus particular configuration. The main point I wanted to make was we can catch a lot of these things with automation in terms of like tests being tagged with a feature gate and pairing that to the life cycle of the feature gate. So Dims, you were talking about once a feature graduates, and like we have a process for that. We lock feature gates on once they reach GA. We can scan test names and say like anything referencing a feature, once the feature gate is locked on, then the tests should be able to assume that if they're running against this version of Kubernetes, that feature gate is on. Now, there may be additional configuration that gets into what Sergey was talking about, like just because the feature is graduated doesn't mean it's necessarily configured. So that's a secondary thing, but we can absolutely catch that, oh, you graduated the feature gate and you didn't, like your test is still being filtered. So it seems like the two dimensions for features at least are like, what are the feature gates that have to be on for this test to be meaningful? And what is their default state? And that way, and right now those are sort of conflated in a single tag, like the presence of a feature tag today is only, I guess, supposed to be used if the feature isn't on by default. And so then once we promote it to beta and want the test to run, we remove the feature tag from the test, which kills everybody's ability to filter out that test if they have to turn off the gate for some reason. So I think splitting those two dimensions, what's the feature gate and what's the default enablement state, and then have the CI jobs that are currently excluding all feature tagged tests. It would be more reasonable to have them exclude features that are off by default.
It's even funnier than that, in that like some people also use node alpha feature to be like, I have a feature that's in alpha, so you don't necessarily want to run me, which is part of the point of like introducing the feature gate thing that's coming up.
Yeah, so I like the idea of identifying what the gates or feature names are, and identifying, I don't even know if alpha beta is the right thing, but like default state, because sometimes we'll have something that goes to beta but isn't on by default yet. And really what I think we want is to have a reasonable default config be like, run the EDE tests, exclude tests for features that aren't on by default, and exclude tests that require special config. And then I can, on a case-by-case basis, like if I'm messing with those things, turning them on or special configuring them, I can opt into those tests.
So Jordan, can we compute that default state outside of the set of features that we have defined currently with their locked or not locked and all those things?
Can we compute the default?
Right. For example, if we have to check if there is a GPU present that is available to a pod, or a run class handler has been registered, do we separate how we discover those things and find out what the correct defaults should be for that feature, separately from whether the feature flag is on or off through the test definitions?
I think the feature gate defaults are known at like build time. Like we can write a unit test that looks at the feature gates and says, what's their default state? If something is runtime determined, like what you're talking about, like is a GPU available or is a runtime class configured, that is like the special configuration runtime type of thing. I don't think we can determine that ahead of time. But we can mark the test in a way that says this requires variable runtime configuration. It's certainly less neat than the feature gate stuff.
Yeah, and Derek, you have a hands up. Can I reply to this before you comment?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so, and yeah, James, I think it's going to the next item. Originally, I proposed to have a special tag to indicate the special environment that is required. But after CI group yesterday, we discussed that special, like catch all special tags. We already have special tags like Linux only, or like serious, slow, disruptive, and performance. And catch all special tag may look okay in theory, but in practice, we likely will need to have a little bit more detailed special flags. So we suggest to have unique tags for every single configuration we require. So GPU flag will be there, and the runtime class tag may be there, but it will be unique per configuration that we require, and we somehow documented in comments for the test. So next person investigating it will know what to expect.
Sergey, that is more about, I don't know.
Yeah, it's not about
the set that is there about performance disruptive, slow serial, Linux only are attributes of either the environment we are running in or what kind of tests that we want. So that's even worse than adding to it is not going to help us. If that bag of list of things expands more, then it's going to be more confusing, I feel. Derek, sorry.
Yeah, so I just want to state what I think is obvious, but sometimes it's useful to make sure we all agree. Historically, we started out with some GPU features built into Kubernetes that it was an error. And so I think we just need to make sure that we all make sure we agree, that is, the Kubernetes project itself only needs to test contracts that it makes as a project, but not features or layering that exploiters of those contracts then leverage to test. So for example, like I would assume that no GPU feature testing is ever done in KK. Only device plugin mock plugin testing is done in KK. And where we have some debt where something may or may not have been present in existing test suites, it's a call to action to remove those. So we had GPU specific metrics at one point in the kubelet that we worked with NVIDIA to remove or are on the process of removing. But I just want to make sure that like we all kind of agree that in some of these cases, it's similar with runtime classes, for example, like that was meant to obfuscate communities like Kata or maybe gvisor. I would never expect a Kata test to be present in KK. And I just want to make sure that we all agree with that in the same way that like KK shouldn't be exercising CSI driver plugins either that are not sourced from the Kubernetes community itself.
I agree with you, Derek. There's one additional twist is we should let the Kata folks be able to run our stuff where it exercises their special things as well, right?
For example, I would expect for like NVIDIA, I would expect the NVIDIA GPU operator would write its own testing, or the vendor who's providing their device to write their own testing. And they don't need to run a full qualitative KK suite. They just need to run the suite that verifies their intersection with the device plugin API. Similarly with Kata, we shouldn't prevent exercising. Well, I guess that's an interesting intersection. Like, do you have to?
People do it now, Derek. That's the issue, right? Like, if for NVIDIA we allow them to switch from the mock version that we have to the version that they have, and they exercise, the full suite of tests that we have. They do that right now. Like many of the people in the ecosystem rely on our tests, and then they'll have a way to run their stuff with our tests.
Yeah,
but that doesn't mean that's more like a conformance test. That doesn't mean there'd be no GPU specific dependencies in Kubernetes. So like to run the Kubernetes E2E test, you wouldn't need a GPU driver. You'd need the mock device plugin.
I agree with you, Jordan. I'm not talking about the conformance test. I'm talking about the node conformance. Node conformance right now, a lot of people use in different ways. Validate their CRI implementations and stuff.
Yeah. But even within node conformance, we don't have any test that validates the behavior behind a runtime class obfuscation, right? I'm aware of many runtime class configurations in the world that either loosen or tighten how a container is containerized. I don't think we need to maybe structure those tests to say, hey, what is the runtime class you want to apply to every pod transparent to me? So I guess, yeah, I wouldn't expect us to have anything more unique than I asked for a device from a mock plugin and I got said device. And then where we've struggled a little bit right now is handling exotic architectures or topologies where things intersect. So NUMA, multi-NUMA, I guess ARM, those types of challenges that come up. But at least for GPUs, I just want to be clear, like I don't think if there's anything GPU around, it should be a thing that we work to finish removing, because we had started a long path to do that at least. And personally, I would put a hold on any tests that tried to exercise something unique behind a runtime class, because the whole point is to keep it opaque. And so anyway, that's just all I wanted to get
out. When it comes to devices, there's at least been a couple of specific bugs that have come from OpenShift's device testing that would potentially be useful to have a signal inside KK, mostly out of, it's all well and good having like a mock plugin, but it's also useful to have a sense of like if something's going to break a more realistic use case for something, especially if there's a couple of things we can do that cover a large range of a feature's usage.
Yeah, so I know at Red Hat, we've run some machinery to test like NUMA alignment with particular device topologies that we can't keep up with the scale of workload that the Kubernetes PR flows would test, but we have definitely caught those issues. I don't have a clear path on why not. What I would do is at least I try to go back to where at least at Red Hat we have capacity to try to go and improve those mock plugins where in some cases it's difficult to write that mock absent a concrete device. So I'm sure other vendors or community representatives can share that same challenge.
Yeah, figuring out the right boundary there is hard. I don't think, at least short term, doing a like clear-cut boundary is necessarily best, but that falls into the range of it's complicated.
Yeah, thank you, Derek, for comment. I don't know how to. I mean, I don't think it changes. This not changes what needs to be done in tagging, but I see your point. Like, we less special environments we will have, better for us because it means that we're doing the right thing.
I think maybe it's just something to consider for the things we think we need to add a special tag to. Like, is this a special tag because it's depending on a particular backing implementation? If that's the case, then maybe we should consider removing the test or reworking the test to be able to run against a mock. If it's a special configuration where it's not an extension point, it's just like this is an optional thing and you can configure a cluster this way, that seems more reasonable. Like presence of a runtime class or turning on service account token signing or like some optional thing you can configure. That seems like a reasonable thing to flag with this requires special configuration.
Okay, makes sense. And I think we can handle special configurations through maybe tags and comments for the tests. So going forward, another thing that we have is node feature, and node feature was originally designed as a opposite to node conformance. So everything that is not node conformance needs to be node feature, indicating that it's not running on every single environment or every single distro. The problem today is, I mean, we have two separate tags, node feature and feature, and they semantically similar. The catch here is that feature was indicating special environments, and we mostly filter by feature, when not feature indicating special functionality, and we query by not feature. So it's opposite meaning. Opposite use, but the same meaning. And this opposite use is caused by the fact that most of node features are working fine with environments that we running our CI on. So we just query by node feature, and we don't even filter by any special features today. Merging them will be right thing semantically, and I ran some analysis. There is not much intersection, so you won't lose. I mean, with the cleanup that needs to be happen, we will get to the right point. And then if you start applying them the way we change semantic in number one, so feature is no longer indicating special environment, then it will be exactly the same semantic, and we can slowly move into like right usage of not feature and feature, and it will be the same. So same tag. I hope I explained it right. Okay. And then node conformance. Node conformance is a feature, a set of functionality that can be run everywhere, and that conform that node is operating the way it should operate, given the environment. So node conformance still may have special tags, like special requirements, special environment is required, but if everything configured right in an environment, that those tests needs to pass, and every time.
Hang on,
yeah.
Sergey. I'm still stuck on number 3. So
Okay.
Renaming node feature to feature. Right now, as far as I can see, node feature is present in the SIG describe or whatever in the test, and it is present in the test definitions saying, regex switch on or off, right? So when you say rename node feature to feature, does it also imply that we will add it to the list of features that we have alpha beta things that are listed down? There is a special Go file where we have the list of features and whether they're in alpha beta GA and whether they're locked or unlocked. So does it mean that we are going to migrate this list? Like, for example, there's a node feature called GKE environment, right? Like, or garbage collect. So will that end up in the list of features? I hope not.
No, this is orthogonal. So number 5 introduces a feature gate. So I think we need to distinguish features that is permanent indications that this thing requires like not working everywhere, and feature gate indicating that functionality is being developed. So I think feature gate will be something that you're talking about that go through alpha, beta, and deprecated stages. And we can make it even strongly typed. We can try to have a helper method that will require you to pass a feature gate as a parameter. Something like that. When feature will be more permanent thing, like once you applied feature or not conformance, it will stick forever. You don't need to remove it any longer. Unless like feature will be graduated to not conformance when it's applicable everywhere.
So we'll have feature, which is there in test definitions and test tags, and we have feature gate, which is going to be there in the Go file, which can be toggled on or off, from say the kubelet command line or API server command line.
Yep.
Right.
This is a proposal, to distinguish this feature gate progression and feature as something that requires that is not working everywhere.
Is the intent to resolve the feature tags for all EDE tests or just node EDE tests?
I think we can do it for all feature tests. Mostly for node, like for node, not feature was used. Not feature also used for SIG storage sometimes. So, I mean, I will go talk to SIG storage when change will be needed.
Okay, I'm strongly in favor of resolving the feature confusion for all the EDE tests. I see this. So the document seemed scoped to node stuff, but
it started from node, but right, yes, I plan to, like, if we'll change definition of feature, I will change it in common document for SIG testing, or that is on community repository. So, James, did it answer your question about renaming?
Yeah, please go ahead. I skipped 4 and got you to do 5. Now you can go back to 4.
Yeah, it's really hard to understand 3 and 4 well at 5 because but 5 is, I think, coming back to 4, not conformance, the proposal is to document it, and the problems that we discussed yesterday on conformance meaning that not conformance has a conformance word in it, and it may be super confusing. We entertained some possibilities for renaming the node CI group. We didn't come up with like very good solution. Like some examples are like capabilities, behaviors, but we need to have something that's saying like this is functionality that works on every distro. Conformance is a right word here, but it's kind of conflated with how conformance works in certification program. So if you have suggestion on better words, please tell us. Otherwise, we'll just keep not conformance for now, at least.
Yeah, the problem here is what is the list of tests that should run when we run code conformance. That's the usual problem, right? Like, and when somebody like Containerd or Cryo are running something that they think is node conformance, did all the tests run or not? That's the usual problem. And like you can't easily tell whether all the tests that were supposed to run actually ran or not, which is the same problem we have in conformance. And we did that, we tackled that by adding a YAML file, which has a consolidated list of tests that need to run. So I have a feeling that you will strengthen the need to do something like that here also, I think.
I see. Yeah, I mean, it basically goes down to conformance being having very similar meaning. So many toolings that we have for conformance may be applicable for not conformance going forward. Yeah, one problem with not conformance is if environment doesn't support something, then not conformance not supposed to run. Like this does not supposed to run. And it leads me to this discussion about feature gate and beta. So once feature gate goes to beta, we don't have this feature flag any longer. So, okay, let's go to the feature flags. So feature gate.
Okay. Hang on.
Yeah.
So just before you go there, there is one more use case that people use node conformance for. I just want to make sure that you realize that or understand that, which is people who are developing custom CRIs or virtual kubelet or other alternate implementations, they end up running node conformance as well. So, let's make sure that we cover, their use case too. So they'll get some sense of, okay, the kubelet equivalent that I'm writing is as good as what is there in the community.
Okay. Yeah, it's a good point. And today, for instance, all runtime classes are marked as a feature. When what we discussed today, some tests needs to be marked as not conformance because they're supposed to work. You're supposed to have pod into this runtime class, but behavior is undefined. So yeah, that's some of the runtime class may be marked with not conformance going forward, and it's a good thing that runtimes will test that this functionality is actually working. So yeah, thank you. That's a good comment. So what I wanted to discuss is not conformance and beta features. So when feature is in alpha, okay, when functionality is in alpha, features overload the term. When functionality is in alpha, we'll apply feature gate and alpha tags. We also will need to apply feature tag because alpha, everything is in alpha requires special environment. So feature is needed there. But then when it goes to beta, we need to remove feature tag. And once we remove feature tag, we need to mark this job as like, I mean, we remove feature because it's not alpha any longer. But the question is, do we add not conformance there, or we don't add any tags while it's in beta? So beta indicates that it can be turned off. So it's may not work on all environments. But at the same time, we don't want to have it as feature because we want to test it extensively. So proposal here is to treat betas as almost GA. In other words, if this feature is applicable everywhere, mark beta features as not conformance. Or another example, when beta feature is not applicable everywhere, keep the feature tag, and feature tag will indicate that not all environments, all distros will need to execute this set of tests. So yeah, this is one of the questionable moment about not conformance. Yeah, Jordan?
That's a lot. Jordan.
not knowing a lot about node conformance specifically, it seems really weird that before a feature is graduated to GA, we would remove the things that identify the test as being related to that feature. I think this goes back to the two dimensions I talked about earlier, like what's the feature and what's the like default state. And maybe there's a third one, which is, do we expect this to be applicable to all environments? But like if the feature hasn't graduated, removing the identification that the test is related to that feature seems really strange.
No, we will keep feature gate and we will keep beta tag. We just remove the feature as indications that it's not working everywhere. And if it's supposed to work on all environments, we'll add node conformance to it. The feature gate will stay. What will be like orthogonal dimension, whether it's working everywhere or not everywhere, will be applied, and it may be marked as node conformance while it's in beta. So it's a little bit strange. It doesn't work the same way as conformance, but this is what will give us the best coverage.
Maybe it's just the name feature. Like in my mind, that's really easy to conflate with feature gate. Maybe there's a different term or a better word that. So it might be worth getting feedback on like what people think that means, and if 8 out of 10 people think the same thing I thought, you might want to pick a different name. But yeah, keeping the feature gate, I thought that's what we were saying with drop. So
yeah, this is confusion of terms, right? So it goes to original Dim's comment that feature might be renamed as a bigger scope of change. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so let's stick to just what you have on screen right now, because this itself is like, so one way to think about this is, what is this implication to all the other SIGs who are not currently paying attention to anything? When there is a prefix with node, they say, oh, this is SIG node stuff, so I'm not going to worry about it, right? Like whether it is a node feature or things like that, node conformance. They just say, okay, this is node SIG node stuff, so let me not worry about it, and I'll do a standard set of things that we do for conformance that everybody else follows, right? So taking that, what are the changes that this, what you're proposing here, what are the changes that are necessitated to that current body of understanding will be, and so that'll be like one angle of looking at it. The other angle of looking at it is like, once that is defined, how do we apply it to all the existing SIG node tests? I think we'll need to like parse it out into like two different steps, so to say.
Okay, yeah, extending to all SIGs is definitely great. And what you also saying is node conformance is very node specific, so other SIGs may not pay attention. Yeah, another reason to have a better name.
Right,
and automation to catch this. Like if we're saying EDE tests need to be tagged in a certain way, then we'll definitely want, like we can go fix up existing EDE tests, but it'll immediately drift unless something is saying like EDE tests have to have these tags, they have to map to these features, or they have to say like, I don't depend on any features. The enablement has to map to the actual enablement. Like something has to enforce that those things match, or they'll get forgotten or copied and pasted, and we'll be back where we are today. So
yeah, we were trying to catch them through Orphan's job, but yeah, maybe
nobody looked at the Orphan's job.
So we start looking into that. We clean it up slowly.
Okay, good.
Yeah, but
it's literally Orphans.
It's named Orphan. Why would I look at that,
right? So the only other thing I can think of is like, what is the value that the changes to the regular understanding, the first bucket that we were talking about, to the rest of the SIGs, and what do they have to change in their normal cadence of how they do work? Example, SIG storage, right? Like what is the value that they get out of this, other than them having to go figure out all these things, like what do I change? What do I flag as a feature, and hoping the feature gate remains the same as what it is now. And they have to go around looking at their test suite. They have to fix up what they have today. I hope they don't have to do that. And then they have to scan through their jobs, and they have to do some modifications there. I don't know the implications of what this will turn into work that needs to be done by different SIGs other than Node.
And one thing that may catch those problems is point number 6. Today we don't test Kubernetes with all the features, feature gates disabled. So if you start the job like that, and we'll run most of the tests that doesn't indicate that the feature gate dependent, then we can catch many situations when, like, at least, I mean, we'll catch tests that depend on feature gates, but doesn't indicate it in the description. So it's another way to catch this kind of problems. And I think it's important to start testing GA features only with a push for no permanent betas. We're going out of betas, but we never test that GA features are stable enough that nobody depends on new functionality being added.
Yeah, we do this for just regular conformance tests with all feature gates turned off, right, Jordan?
Yeah, I dropped a couple links in.
Yeah.
We run E2E tests, so we know that you can start a cluster that is functional and passes all conformance tests.
Conformance tests, yeah.
With all data APIs and features turned off. So that's great. And that actually has caught many things where we accidentally were taking a hard dependency on a beta thing.
Right.
It sounds like you want the same type of thing for node conformance. So
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm +1 on that. That makes a lot of sense.
Okay, so that is TLDR of all the changes, and I will summarize the feedback. And
I do want to poke at one more thing before we go, Sergey, which is, we have 5 minutes left. Damn. So I have a feeling that we need something else, which is like a list of key value pairs that is present, that can be picked up by the test harness, which we can set in either the CI job definition or baked into the environment where it is running, which can be looked up and then check whether, based on that, I don't even know what to call it, like instead of like confusing and conflating like the feature and the feature gate with whatever is present in the environment. You see what I'm trying to say? It's like looking at an environment variable to say, hey, yes, I should be able to use this feature gate because I know that environment variable is on, right? One way to think about it. So if we can have some kind of configuration about what is available in this environment, and that the feature gate can make use of, I think that might be a better way to look at it.
okay, and check for specific like misconfiguration when both node conformance and feature will apply at the same time.
Right, and then we can say that this CI job, this feature gate is on, and we are trying to test this specific feature, but the environment says that whatever I need is not available. So it's easier to surface a problem of that sort instead of like skipping, which we do today. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, I understand. I will start looking into that.
Right.
I don't know how much we can do in yeah, I mean, we can do whatever. Just I'm looking to how much effort it is.
Right. So again, we need to separate it into two things. One is come up with a proposal, which is a KEP, where we enumerate what are the changes that flow across all the SIGs. The environment configuration parameters, the feature gate that you're talking about here, and any implications to like the feature gate is at beta and not switching things off. Those are one bucket, which is applicable to everybody, right? So we need that as a separate KEP, and then we can debate things on it and make sure that everybody else is in line. And then the second part would be, given that those set of definitions and implications, how does it apply to existing node conformance tests would be like a second KEP. But it depends on like how SIG node wants to deal with it. Whether you want to just start with a Google Doc and not worry about a KEP, that I think I'm open there. But we definitely need that first bucket of here is the changes that we are proposing that will be needed across all SIGs, and then we debate with everybody else.
Okay, I think we can make. I wonder how much changes we can make without KEP, which are not local. I mean, not specific. And yeah, for everything else, okay, I will start a KEP.
Yeah, there are some things that you can still do right now, which is doing the node conformance with all the flags switched off. You can still do it with whatever we have right now.
Yep. Okay. Good feedback. Thank you.
Okay, well, we are out of time here, so unless there's any quick comments, I think we should wrap it up.
Thanks a lot,
All right.
Sergey.
Thank you, everybody, for a good discussion.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.